Hello and welcome, everyone. Welcome to another fun episode of DevChatter. Today is Thursday, July 5th, so the day after Independence Day, so hopefully all of the Americans have kept all their fingers intact and haven't blown any off with any crazy fireworks hijinks. So today we're going to be doing programming exercises, as it says down below the stream on the title. I think I'm going to start with the string calculator because it's an interesting one. It follows a step-by-step process, so should be another fun one in that sense. It's one that you could follow along with if you want to do it with us. I mean, obviously you can follow along with anything that we do here on the stream, but this is a fun one that I think probably a number of people have tried before, and it is an interesting one. I like it because it is another step-by-step one. So welcome everybody as you're starting to trickle in here. One of the things I like about the string calculator, as I said, is because it goes through step by step, that feels a lot like the real world scenario where you're working on a project and you're getting more features over time. So as you start out, there's a limited feature set that you're building, and then someone comes along and says, hey, we need this too, oh, and then there's this feature. And so I like a lot about how that sort of, forces you to only build to what you need today, because there's a chance that that future feature that we do get wasn't going to happen or would come in differently. So what I'd actually like from a kata like the string calculator is, for example, if you had some kind of a mechanic for like flip a coin for which of two directions you might have to go. So like if you had a couple of different paths. So like if each major feature set had two choices for which way they wanted to go, I think that'd be really fun for a kata. I might have to make one myself because I don't know of one that exists that does that. But the cool effect I think that would have is sort of making it so you can't plan for future features because you don't know which things are going to expand. So in programming, now I haven't done our series on Solid yet, which I am going to start setting up, and I'm going to try to get those scheduled out in advance, so we'll have an episode on each of the Solid principles. I haven't gotten those scheduled yet, but when I do, they're probably going to be, my guess would be starting in August. We'll start doing a Solid stream, but I still am going to talk about the principles while we're working on this code. So one of them is that your code should be open to extension and closed to modification. So that's the open-close principle as part of Solid. And the interesting thing about that one is that it's sort of the idea that you want to be able to extend your code and add new features, but you want to be careful about how you do it. So that's a lot of the time why in our bot project, why I did things like I made a class right off the bat to handle our commands that the bot uses. And that's essentially following the open-close principle. And so the idea is that when I need a new command, I just make a new class. I don't have to change any of the existing commands. I don't go into a command handler and do that. And the reason that I made that extensibility there is because I know that we're going to add lots of commands in the future. So there are some things where this is going to be something we're going to change in the future. We're going to add to this. So you want to build in the extensibility there. And so katas like this one, where you don't look ahead, the idea is that by not looking ahead and just thinking about your current set, you can maybe guess what's going to change, and then you can see as the kata goes on, how close was I? What was I right about? And so that's kind of the idea. Yeah, Till, that is correct. So open-close principle is very powerful, but you got to be careful with it. So the suggestion that I give to most people is don't use the open-close principle until the first time you need to change. So if you look at, you know what, I didn't even start our bot. Let me go ahead and start the bot real quick. If you take a look at our early videos, so they're on our YouTube channel. If you take a look at those at the very beginning, I actually did not set up our command structure in the bot right off the bat. I did that because I was following the open-close principle correctly, the way that I recommend people do it. So I started off with just a switch statement for our commands. And the reason is I hadn't had the change yet. Now I knew that it was that's an extensibility point, right? So I could have just gone to the command, but I wanted to do it right because I wanted to show you guys, hey, we don't know yet. And then once we do know it's going to change and we need new features in it, then we make it extensible. And so that's sort of the idea. So so that's actually how you set it up. So the caution that I would give to anybody on open close is don't do it until you need it. So the first time you make a change there, that's when you make it extensible. So it takes away the, you have to have great experience in order to, just know when it is. Because experience does help you with that, but that doesn't mean that everyone can't make good decisions about when to do open close. So, because you can. Okay, so the bot's running, so it's in chat, and we are going to go ahead and start on the string calculator kata. And I actually am going to do it in Visual Studio, even though sometimes when we do from scratch, like small scale applications, we use VS Code. But this time I feel like doing Visual Studio. So either one works. If you want to follow along, you are welcome to. I can repost the link to the exercise that we're doing, which is this one. And you can just find string calculator online. It's easily Googleable. Yeah, I think it is going to be a console app, Till, but I need to read the instructions first. Remember? Wink, wink. Because... Alright, so I am going to create a new project, and we are going to put this in... Where are we going to put this? DevChatter, on stream... DevChatter on stream. Where are we going to put it? Where are we going to put it? We're going to make a new folder for it? We'll make a new folder for it. So we'll do 20, okay. So we'll say 2018 0705 underscore string calculator. We'll do that for now. And it is not going to be an XUnit project. It's going to be a console application, I believe. But before I click that, let's go read the instructions up to the point that we're allowed to. So remember, in the string calculator, we are just going to go through the instructions up to the point that it tells us to. So this cut is designed to help you learn test-first coding and refactoring. To that end, try not to read ahead or guess what the next requirement will be. Work incrementally and complete as many tasks as you can in 30 minutes. We're not going to do the 30-minute time limit. Normally what you do with the string calculator is you do the 30-minute time limit, and then you throw out your code and you start it over again. And you do that repeatedly. So we could do that a few times, but the reason I'm tossing it out is because we slowed down a little bit on this stream because I like to talk to you guys a little bit more about what we're doing. So the 30-minute time limit would really limit how far we can get. Okay, so I'm going to scroll so that we're down to step 1, and then I'm just going to read one at a time. So create a string calculator with a method add that returns an integer. Okay, so from this actually, I don't see the need to have a console app yet. I'm going to start with a class library. So we're going to do a class library called string calculator. Yeah, exactly. 30 minutes with 90 minutes of talking to Blub and Greendorf and Till. That's what's going to happen. So... it's cool though. I mean, the like we are here to chat about code. We talk about code. We talk about what things we like about it. I saw a discussion going on in C# Fritz's stream right before I hopped over here, because we were hosting him before we started, and I actually had to hop into his stream to get involved in that discussion because they were talking about what language should be taught in schools. So programming language, and so the idea is that yeah. So the funny thing was, you say Till, Python's actually the one that someone was really against. So we're going to start off with a string calculator class, and now the thing it tells us to create first is an add method that takes in string numbers. So I'm just going to put this straight in here. So we're going to say public, public. And what's it returning? Returns an int. So int add string numbers. There we go. So there's the method signature we need. Yeah, so Blub is actually correct about one of the problems is that in computer science programs they tend to have like computer science researchers are like the professors at the schools, and their expertise isn't in programming. So Till says Python. I know some people that dislike it because of the white space requirement. I actually used to teach that to non-programmers at a university. Any school that is teaching Java right now should be teaching C# instead. Yes, Greendolf. I actually agree with that one. C# is a more interesting language with more things that I think you could really expand upon. And I actually think that it would be good if schools taught both C# and C++, because it shows you what each thing can do, and you'll understand better what's going on underneath the hood in C# if you know C++. So even though you don't have to do it in C#, it's nice to know it happened. Okay, so we're getting string numbers. And what this is so we want to start with the simplest test case of an empty string, and then one number, then two. So create a string calculator with the method. Okay, so we're not told. All right, so solve things as simply as possible. An empty string should return a sum of 0. Numbers can include 0, 1, or 2 integers. Okay, and it looks like they're separating by commas, and it returns the sum of the integers provided in the string numbers. Okay, remember to refactor after each test. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I am going to make a test project in here as well. So we're going to make xunit test project. Oh, blub, sorry. Yeah, vb.net is not a link, Nightbot. Yes. What's wrong with talking, guys? You guys talking? Yeah, so I like the idea of teaching more than one language to students in a university setting. When I was in school, I actually had one course I took while I was in college where we used 4 different programming languages in that one course. And the teacher actually just spent a day teaching us the basics of the language, and then kind of just said go. It's like you know you can figure it out. Look it up, read the man pages. Figure out how to work with this. And so I actually thought that was pretty good. Nipple Mage, the next episode of Learning C#. If you check out the events page, which actually I think I have linked there, that will tell you. I believe it is the 16th, but I could be wrong. Okay, so we have our unit test project. The first thing that we want to do is the empty case. So if we take a look at this one, we want to say an empty string should return a sum of 0. So I want to say should return sum of 0 given empty string. So underscore given empty string. So that's how I like my test names to be, with lots of spaces and syntax errors. Actually, I'm just going to fix this real quick. So we're just going to do it like this. So should return... I'm actually just going to say should return 0 given, given, helps if I cap the right E. Actually, we don't want that there. Return 0 given empty string. So this is string calculator add should. So add should return 0 given empty string. There we go. I like it. That name tells me what is going on. So I am going to do a rename. Hope it gets it. It did not. So we're going to rename this file manually. There we go. Okay, everything's good. Let's go ahead and run this test, which should go green to start because there's nothing here. It doesn't even have a dependency on the other project yet. So the fact that the other project doesn't build doesn't matter. So now I'm going to throw a new not implemented exception. Now I'm going to call that method. So string calculator, and then I'm going to say dot add int result equals this. And I want to assert equal 0 result. So that's what we expect to get back given that value. So this requires referencing that project. Now the nice thing here is that I'm using ReSharper, so what I can actually get away with is just telling it to reference this, and it will go do the project reference for me. All that actually happened behind the scenes when it did that is it'd be the equivalent if I went here to do add and then went to reference, and it would add a reference to that. And that works for whatever method you wanted to use for doing an add reference there. Oh, I made string calculator the class and the namespace, didn't I? Oh, I didn't make it static. That's what the problem is. I don't need an actual string calculator right now, so I see no reason to make an object every time. This just seems simpler. So the problem I'm running into is I made this the namespace. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to call this one the calculator. So we're going to say string calculator.calculator. Wait, is this not what? String calculator. Okay, it hadn't added it on top. All right, got it. All right, so only learning. We did courses 5 languages, 1 semester. I started with Lua. Your first time experience with Lua is Warcraft add-ons. That's probably pretty common to have Warcraft be the Lua place. It's fantastic little scripting language. Every time I use ReSharper, I start to cry a little. Till, it is not that hard to get ReSharper. Aren't you a student? Are you not a student? Students get it for free. And good catch on the file rename. Greendorf, you don't have it either? Why don't you guys have it? I hate it when packages have the same namespace as a class name. Yeah, Blub, I agree. It can actually cause some problems. That's why I changed off of it. So if you don't know this, be careful about having a namespace and a class having the same name. You can actually run into a few issues. There's a few things that can come up in C#. Okay, so now we're going to run this test again. It shouldn't have passed. It shouldn't pass this time. It should go red. There it goes. Okay, and it's because we did this. So step 1, we're going to return 0. Now once we return 0 and run the tests, now it should actually pass. I had it through an employer and now I don't have that employer. Greenduff, convince your new employer to get it. That was my suggestion. And to be honest, it actually doesn't have to be ReSharper. There are other tools that do the same. Oh, you are the new employer. Oh, sorry, Greendolf. Well, that would do it then. I have the same problem. I am also my own employer, so when I convince my employer to buy something for me, it means me buying it for me, which just means costly. Okay, so here's what we want to do. We need to make another test. I don't feel like we need to refactor yet. We have one test, we have one method, it does one thing. We need to go bigger than that. So the next thing that we want to do is, it looks like we can include 0, 1, or 2 integers. So if we only get one integer, we should return back that number. So I'm going to start by saying return 1 given string 1. Right? We're going to say that. Now don't worry about my name yet because I'm actually going to change it. I know that's going away. That's even in our set of work that we have right now. So given the number 1, we expect to get back the result 1. So I'm going to run these tests and this one should fail. Okay, this test fails, previous one still passes, so that's good. So now if I change this to 1, obviously I'd make the new test pass, but the old one would fail, so I can't do that. So the simplest thing that makes this work, which is usually the recommendation when you're doing TDD, is you just say if numbers equals 1, return 1. Right, so there's the simplest way to make this pass, which, yeah, this is not, it's not the best approach. Awesome, Till. I'm glad you liked it. Yeah, that was a long time ago. I think we did that back in January or February or something. I was a guest on Fritz's stream, and I talked with him about his unit testing practices, which, to be honest, aren't that bad. They're not that bad. He had reasonable naming when I got in there, and had some pretty good tests. Okay, so that obviously makes it pass. That is garbage, though, but again, I don't really have a lot of duplication yet. I think I want to do one more test. So this is empty string case. This is... I want to say given string 1. Don't worry about that name yet because it's going away. So let's go ahead and do this. So we're going to say return 2 given a string 2. We're going to have 2 and we're going to have 2. So now these tests are identical. Yeah, don't you love the should? I really like the should. I always do should for that, and I also like the underscores. So you have like here's what we're expecting, and given this. So I want to say like, oh, I should get this, you know, getting that. So you could do it the other way if you wanted. You could say should given this return this, but I like should return whatever the value is or whatever the action is. So if it's like should remove this. Oh, awesome, Greendorf. Yeah. So I really like this naming style and taking the fluent assertion style approach, although I intentionally don't use fluent assertions every time because I want to be somewhat familiar to more people. So that's why I sometimes do this approach instead of using fluent assertions. Off the stream, I pretty much just use fluent assertions, though. Okay, so this test obviously doesn't pass yet, and it's also duplicated the previous one. So I'm going to make it pass, and then I'm going to do some refactoring. So the shortest way to make it pass is this. I'm going to just do 2 and 2. And once it passes, then I will refactor to the obvious thing that I should be doing here. So it passes, cool. But clearly this is the wrong approach, this is just duplicate. So I shouldn't do that. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to try to parse it. So I'm going to do an if, and I'm going to do int.tryParse. Now, if you haven't seen tryParse before, we're just going to do this straight up. So we're just going to try to parse that number. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say parse it into out int and say let's see, number. We'll go with, so that was numbers. This is number. I'm not a huge fan of that one. But we'll see how it turns out. And we'll say that if this succeeded, just return the number. And so now I should be able to get rid of these, and we'll find out if it works. So let's do this. Run the tests again. If it works, cool. Okay. A lot of tests that would fit into my... This should do that given this case format. Don't necessarily fit nicely into the strict naming scheme. Yeah, if it doesn't fit that, then you usually want to change up the name anyway. So the interesting thing is that TDD is a way that developers work. So employers and things like that shouldn't necessarily care about your unit tests, but you should do them because we know they add value. Okay, so if you haven't seen this structure before, so a try parse just says attempt to pull a number out of this and put it into the output variable on the right. And this is called an output variable. You just use the out keyword and then do a variable declaration of the type that you want. So we're doing an int parse, so we created an int. So that's how that works. All right, so now back here, we also have some code duplication that we want to refactor out. So you'll notice that these two methods here are the exact same. So what we can do is we can change this a little bit to work a little nicer. So instead of a fact, I am going to do what's called a theory. And now I want to add inline data. And the inline data that I want to add here is 1 is my expected result, and 1 is my input. So now I'm going to say int expected and string input. So now I'm going to say input and expected. And I'm going to leave the name the same. So this is how we do this one. So I'm going to leave it the same. The reason I'm doing this is because I want to make sure it works. So remember, simple simple change, run the test whenever you can. Sometimes you have to make a bigger change at once, and when you do, go for it. But when you can, make it simpler. Okay, so I want to say, I'm going to change the method name now. I'm going to say return parsed number, return number given single number string. maybe return the number given single number string. So for single number strings, we should get back that number. And so now I want to do this. We expect to get back 2 given 2. So that should be the same test as this one, since we know the code was the same. So now this should pass, and it seems like it works fine. And we could do another one. I'm going to put in another number here, like say, 24 instead, right? And 24 should also work. Absolutely, beginners could totally do this exercise. It is not a difficult one. And there are a lot of places to find programming exercises. So I've done a lot of programming exercises of the year. A lot of times you'll find them called programming katas. But if you want a nice collection, Steve Smith and I, over the years, created this collection of katas that he nicely put together here on his GitHub account, and I linked that as well. So if you head here, you'll see there's a handful of katas that are set up in a pretty similar manner, and they're pretty easy to work with. So I've worked with them with a lot of groups of people before, and I use them for TDD training a lot of times. And then a few of them you can use for teaching a specific solid principle. So they're designed for, they do different things, and if you understand how they work and what they do, you can use them for training specific stuff. Exorcism kata? I don't think that's the word you were going for, but maybe it was, Segfalter. Oh, okay, that's cool. Yeah. Okay, so this works well. So single number strings works just fine. Let's go ahead and do the next piece. So the next one that we want to do is we want to do 2 number strings. So let's go ahead and add a test for that. Whoopsies. All right. So I'm going to do it with this inline data approach right off the bat because I expect I'm going to be using it in a second anyway. So I'm going to just write this one this way. So we're going to say 1 plus 1 equals 2, basically. So we're going to say return 2, and I'm going to say given 2 1s, which is a weird way to write it. So the string calculator gets a little weird because you're working with numbers. Your test names get difficult. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to separate, like, values, I'm using the numeral. But numbers of them, I'm using the words. So that's kind of how I'm trying to do it. And so I figure if I'm consistent, other developers will be able to read what I'm writing. So that's the reason why I go that route. Now, you might say, hang on a second, this test is the exact same as the other one. Why didn't you just add a new inline data row to the previous one? And the reason I did that, Greendorf, I probably will actually at some point. So I was planning on doing some F# stuff. That's actually why I invited an F# developer to pair program with me one time. But then literally the day after I invited an F# programmer to pair with me on the stream is when Fritz started his F# Fridays thing. So I was like, man, he's going to think I'm like, doing his thing if I then start doing F# right after he starts. So I was like, I'll hold off and do F# later. Okay, so we expected to get 2, but we actually got 0. So that is actually, so expected, but no. We really did expect this to fail for this reason. We knew that was going to fail because we didn't actually handle that. So right here, you'll see that it attempts to parse out one number. So this only handles the single number case. We need to actually try and split on that value. So I'm going to show you guys the easy way to do this as a programmer right now, but there's actually a better way in C# to do this. We're not going to talk about that just yet because it's a little complicated. And I want to show you all the easier approach first. And in our small scale, there's not a risk of a performance issue from doing this because we're running one thing. So there's no real problem here. So here's what I want to do. I want to say string dot split. Well, actually what I could do is this. technically I could just say if the string equals 1 plus 1, but I'm not going to do that. That's too simple. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if numbers dot split. Actually, I'm just going to split it first. Whoop. Bummer. All right, so we're going to do that, and then we're going to store that into an array of strings. So this is that split, and it is going to get split by a space. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to split this string on a space. So it's going to look in the string, oh wait, no, comma, right? They're commas. Yes, they're commas. Okay, split on a comma. And then we're going to go ahead and say those are the strings that we have as a result. And then we want to take those and we want to parse them. So I want to say for each string r s. So we're going to say for each one of these, we're going to do this. S. So right now this is still going to fail, but I think the old ones are going to still pass. We'll find out in a second. So I still want my new one to fail. It should return 1 now is the problem though. Okay, so the previous one's passed, and this one failed, and the reason is because it should be 1. Okay, good. So it passed and passed back a 1. So that means that our code worked, it failed the way we expected it to, which is a good thing. That means we know what our code is doing. So we basically said, let's split it, we'll loop over it, and then we'll try to parse it, and because we returned, that means we only actually checked the first number. We didn't actually do any adding in our calculator. So we just parsed the first number. So let's go ahead and make it add. So we're going to start sum equals 0. And so then we're going to say sum plus equals number that we got here. And then instead of returning 0, we're going to return back, sum. There we go. And I need a semicolon. I know how to C#. All right, there we go. So that ought to work. So we got sum. We parse it for each one. We're going to add that on. Should work great. And yes, there are other ways to write that. I could do horrible things with that code. We won't right now, though. I may at some point show you the horrible thing that we could do, although we're probably not going to keep that code, because we don't like horrible code here. But we like to see interesting things that we can do in programming, because it's fun. All right, let's take a look at our tests. Do we have a lot of duplication? Do we need to refactor? That and this, they have the same code, but I don't really think we need to refactor them, because I don't think we're going to get anything out of that. This also doesn't have much to it yet. Yeah, Till, we're not going to do a bunch of method overloading. That doesn't sound fun. So this code also looks pretty simple. So I think that looks good. I don't want to do any refactoring just now. So let's go ahead and add an extra set of inline data here. So what we're going to do is duplicate this line. And once duplicated, we can then, we're going to change the name of this test once we do that. So we're going to say we expect 3 given 1, 2. So return sum of numbers given 2 numbers. So this is a pretty simple one here. Let's just add a single test case. Okay, that looks great. And notice that even though these tests are literally the exact same thing, the reason I have them separate is that I want these different names. So because they're actually testing a different concept, I want to make sure that we handle that. Yeah, Till, negative numbers probably are going to work right now, but we're not worried about that. And the reason I say that is, if you expect something might come up, then yeah, you want to add a test for that, just to make sure it can't happen. So if we had instructions that we should not allow negative numbers, then yeah, we should absolutely add a test for it and make sure that we can't add negative numbers. But keep in mind that that might be an expected thing in our system. Since we didn't have an instruction on it, we don't know. So normally we'd want to ask someone about that. Empty string is that. Add the return values of string, provided string numbers. Remember to refactor after each test. Okay, so I want to do one more test just to make sure that it really works. So we're going to actually say 13. How can I make 13? I could make 11 and 2, and that'll be 13. So let's run the test one more time, make sure it works. All right, there we go. That test works well for this code. Let's move to the next instruction. So instruction number 2. Allow the add method to handle an unknown number of numbers. Oh, see, that's funny. So the problem is that string calculator is actually written for any language. It's not written for C#. So in some other languages, you might have looked for that comma and then done something on it, but because we have the split operation, that actually was the simplest step for us already. So that was actually simpler than trying to find a comma and then like substringing before and after or something like that. So this was our easier approach. So that's the one we did. So we actually already got this. So, unknown number of numbers in the string. So let's go ahead and just... Oh, and I had a typo. You guys didn't tell me about that typo? All right, return some of the numbers given more than 2 numbers. So we're going to say this is our more than 2 numbers. So I'm going to say 2, 3, 4, and that is going to be 7, 10, 11. 11, and then we're going to say 2, 2, 2. So that is what, 9? And then 23. So 23, so that's going to be 34, 36. So 36. If I didn't mess any of that math up, and we're about to find out if I messed up any of that math. And yes, exactly, Greendorf. Hey, you know, I mentioned that those existed when I did the split. I mentioned that stuff that there are there's a more performant way to do it, but it's more complicated. So I didn't want to do that because there are going to be enough people in here that's going to make, you know, their eyes glaze over when they see it. So yes, there's often a you know, better performance way to... Yeah, exactly. See, thank you, Ace Flameseer. The point is, if I did that, so I might show that at the end, that we could use a span for it. Oh, did you? That's actually pretty cool, Greendorf. Okay, so we got these running, so we can now handle the any number. We knew that feature already worked because of how we built the code. So let's take a look at the rest of 3 here. So we have allow the add method to handle new lines between numbers instead of commas. Okay, so we want to allow new lines in addition to commas. So that's easy. Let's go ahead and add a test for that. So I'm going to copy our lowest test here. And I want to say return sum of numbers given... Hey, welcome C# Fritz and friends. Hopefully you were all having a pretty good stream. Since that was an auto host, I may have just surprised a few people that didn't know that they were about to hear my voice talking to them. We're doing some programming exercises here, doing TDD in C#. We're using XUnit and doing the string calculator. So feel free to just watch along with us or follow along if you like. I will post the link in the chat for what it is that we are doing right now. And since all the Fritz people are here, I should probably be wearing a hat just to make you all feel a little bit more comfortable, but it's slightly out of reach right now, so I hope you'll forgive my hatless programming here. I know, it's going to be weird. Okay, so here's what we want to do. So we need to make this work, given, so we want to say return the sum of the numbers, and we now need to add not just commas, but we want to support new lines as well. New line separators. So return sum of numbers given new line separators. So I'm just going to swap out a single comma for a new line, and the test should So it's going to fail, but for the right reason. It's going to fail because we haven't added this feature yet. So this is exactly what we want to see happen. And when we take a look at this one, so I'm going to click on this test, and we should see the result over here on the right. So what looks like happened is it got 23. So it was not able, so it split here, so it tried to parse 11 new line 2 as a number, and it said, whoa, that's not a number, and which it isn't. So that works fine. That's what we expect. So when I open up this split, what I want you to notice here is that the overloads here, this is kind of small and hard to read, but if I look at the overloads, we're currently using the string separator one. And I use that because it's familiar to people. So most developers are used to strings, not characters. But we actually want to use the character separator one. So what I'm going to do is, this one above it says it's a params character separator. So if you haven't seen that before, params is kind of a neat feature in C#. And essentially what it lets me do is, so when we looked at this, you can see that it wants a character array. Now I could obviously do, new character array and initialize it with our values of a comma and a new line. And this would work just fine. However, because it has that params keyword, that actually means that C# will let me just pass variables, and it will treat it as if they are an array. So if I can just keep passing elements, and it'll consider those to be elements in the array. So I can actually get rid of that whole structure and just pass them as if there were an infinite number of overloads for as many characters as I wanted to pass. It's really a cool trick. So that's how a string split works. And once we do that and run the test, so keep in mind that I now have told it split on the comma and the new line, either one. So again, we're getting the power of C# to sort of help us here. And if anybody has any questions about anything that I'm doing here, just go ahead and shout out your questions and I will answer them as we go. Okay, so this test now works. So cool. Let's try doing both of them as new lines just to confirm. Not that we expect it to fail. So we're going to do 22, 2, and 22. So that is going to be 46. And now when we run the tests, again, we still expect everything to pass. So we can do new lines, we can do commas, it doesn't really matter. So that's a really nice trick that we've got there. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look again at our next instruction. See, this is actually, so someone had mentioned that, and yes, Till, the 30 minutes are up. I told you we're not going to worry about that. So someone had mentioned that that there was a case we should check for, the negative numbers, and make sure that we don't allow a negative number. No, Till, there's no problem with using params. All it does is C# will just create that array for us when it does it. So it's going to get there and just be like, oh, it needs to create an array for that. So that's really just a simplification for the programmer. You're not going to have a performance impact in any way, good or bad, from having used params. Yep, it's just a shorthand way of doing it. Realistically, there's an array that gets created behind the scenes for you. You just didn't have to write it. So it's kind of convenient. Okay, so notice here that it says example 1 comma new line is invalid, but no need to test for it. For this kata, we're only concerned with testing correct inputs. So see, sometimes you want to have the safety net to make sure that you cover invalid inputs, but this specifically mentions that that we don't need to cover that case. So that's good that it tells us. Okay, so we get down here. We allow the add method to handle a different delimiter. To change the delimiter, the beginning of the string should be a separate line formatted like this. Okay, so now notice that it's actually giving us customization in how our inputs can modify how the calculator is going to work. So this is when you get into the cool part of this programming exercise. So what we're going to do is, this is the structure of our new one. So I want to say, actually, let me duplicate this right here. So I'm going to duplicate these lines, And I'm going to get us down to just the single one of these for now. Paste in the example that they gave us. Now I'm going to replace delimiter and numbers with the actual values. And I want to say return sum of numbers given. And this is... so it says given custom delimited numbers. Okay, what is the performance impact of blank? Should always be, I don't know, benchmark it. Yes, Greendolf, but on some of them, you know the performance impact is minimal if you actually know what it does behind the scenes. So like the performance impact of using var versus using the explicit type is actually going to be 0 because that affects compile time, not runtime. So if you do notice a difference, then, well, there's something wrong on your computer and your test was flawed. Because it's going to be the same code. Yeah, but Greendolf is right. For a lot of other circumstances where it's not a compile time difference, where they're not the same after compile time, so if you know the compiled code is the same, there's not going to be a difference. However, if they actually produce slightly different code, yeah, yes, exactly. So Greendolf, verify that for me, but I'm pretty sure it does just create an array for you out of those objects. So that would be a good thing to check. But I'm pretty sure that's how it's implemented. Okay, so here's what we want to do. We are supposed to have a delimiter, and then a new line, and then numbers. Example, that returns 3. So we're going to use their example right here. So this string. So they're creating this one. So the semicolon is our new delimiter, and we're saying that we should be able to do that. So this should be able to return this. So when we run this, it isn't going to work. Yeah, I can, yeah, Greendolf, I will get that in the next stream. I don't think I can change that while we're live. I don't think. But I will take a look at that just to help people out with that. Unless I don't, because I don't think I can while we're actually going. So yes, if my stream is too powerful for your computer, we will drop it down a little bit. Yeah, exactly, Greendolf. I think I'd have to restart in order to do it, so I'm not going to kill the stream right now. And Ace Flames here, yes, if we add numbers larger than integers, we are going to get an integer overflow. But again, we're not supposed to worry about those cases for this exercise. Okay, so this test obviously failed. We knew it would. We don't support custom delimiters yet. So expected 3 actual value we got was 0 because it tried to do some weird splitting with it. So what I want to do is, did it say we could have more than one custom delimiter or just one? Whoops. Separated line like this. The first line is optional. All existing scenarios using that or that should work as before. Example, to change the delimiter, the beginning of the string should be a separate line. It looks like there's one delimiter, not multiple delimiters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I'm going to say get delimiter. And I'm going to get the delimiter from numbers. Whoops. Sorry. I don't know how to C# apparently. Custom delimiter equals get delimiter numbers. Pass that in. Span of character numbers. Yeah, totally. I think I need to change my C# version. So right now, Greendorf is freaking out and going through a panic attack right now because I'm doing cool stuff on stream. Whoops, not active debug, all configurations. So pro tip, everybody, I am actually going in here to the properties of my project, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to all configurations because I want to change what language I'm using. So I'm going to change from C# to the latest version of C#. So we're actually going to use C# latest here, so this is going to be 7.3, and I'm going to do the same thing over here. Now don't be too freaked out by this, I just want to use the latest version of C#, which by default is not the one you get, so feel free to yell at Microsoft about that if you like. But now, we should be using 7.3. Might be the tall pants. You might be right, I might be wrong. I'd have to check that one. I think, did I just do what the instructions said? Delimiter. No, you are correct. I wrote it wrong. Delimiter. Delimiter. It makes sense. It's a limit. Welcome to Stream Brain. We don't always think to say delimit. Oh, that's funny. I wrote it right there. Okay, cool. Good job, Brendan. Alright, so why does it not like this? Okay, we're going to do this for now. We'll get it in a minute. Okay, so numbers. So we want to say if numbers dot contains starts with, we're going to say starts with what do we expect it to start with? 2 forward slashes. So if it starts with 2 forward slashes, then we have a delimiter. So what I want to do then is this. I want to say if numbers is that, then we want to say numbers dot substring int index of actually here's what I'm going to do. So if numbers starts with that, then I'm going to do numbers dot split. So I'm going to split numbers again. So this is the performance impact right here. The more wordable line of I have a spell checker extension that I can add. Yeah, that is nice to have a spell checker inside your IDE. But what if you're just stupid and spell stuff wrong all the time? Well, Till, that's not always a problem. Look it up online would be my suggestion there. So I want to split on the new line character. And the reason I want to split on new line is because that's what separates the delimiter section. So if we have this, then we know that we've got one of these. So I want to say, I just want the first one. So this is the delimiter declaration is what I'm going to call it. So I'm going to split and grab the first one. So we said it starts with this. Because it starts with that, that means that we know when we get to the first new line, the left-hand side is what we want. So we're going to split and take the first one. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a substring of this. A substring of that. And I want to cut at 2, length, starting index. We just want to cut there. So delimiter declaration substring. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to return this. Whoa, oh, because I declared it in there. Rip delimiter. And out here, empty string. Okay, so I called this get delimiters. So here's no, Sky Hoshi, I'm not going to do that one. Here's what I'm going to do. So I said get delimiter, right? I think I actually want to just change this to be get delimiters plural, and I'll show you why. So that's our custom delimiter right there. But realistically, I could just say that this is a character array, and this is my delimiters. So now I can make an array with these in it. So instead of returning a string, I'm going to return a character array, which I'm going to define here. So I'm going to say delimiters equals new, and I'm going to say array, curly braces. And by putting in characters, it actually knows that the type is a character array without my having to do anything. So then by doing that, I can now change the return to be our set of delimiters. And instead of returning one like this, I'm just going to add it to our collection. Oh, I made an array. Right. I don't want to do an array. I'm going to do a list of characters because I can add to it more easily. So I'm going to add an item to the list and then return it. New character, oh, string, right, that's got to be a character. So in that case, I need to change how that structure works. So we passed in we got this here, it's actually supposed to be a character. So we know there's only one. So I could do single. So we're going to say 2, grab a single character, and that is our single delimiter, because we're only expecting to support 1 right now. What about a yield return here? Greendorf, we could yield return for our delimiter, for our delimiters here. So if we change this to an IEnumerable of characters, we could do a yield return, and the challenge is that we're going to use them all anyway, so I don't see a lot of value in it, because we're going to do the whole set regardless. So what are you thinking for the value of a yield return? Because if you've got an idea for how we could get a benefit out of it, I'd be perfectly happy to use it. And Old Salty Beard, welcome. Thank you for subscribing. Much appreciated. No sound? What? It's supposed to be sound. You guys should be getting sound. Hang on. Let me mess with stuff. Why aren't you guys getting sound? Ah, there we go. So you guys weren't getting sound. Well, now you should have sound. This was crazy. How did you guys not have sound? Alright. If in the future you only need the first delimiter, say, then you could advance enough to get the first one. Wait, hang on, guys. Hang on. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me no more. There we go. Is that better? You guys got the music on that one, right? Hopefully you guys got the music on that one. Awesome. There we go. Here, we'll turn down the piano music a little bit there, guys. And yeah, spam some hype emotes in the chat, everybody. We got a new sub. All right, so our delimiter array works pretty well now. We return that back. So the challenge here, Greendorf, is I think in some scenarios, yeah, you could get away with doing an IEnumerable, and that'd be right. But the problem is, we're going to look for every one in it and attempt to split on it. So I can't see a case where we're not going to do it. Yeah, so I love yield return also. It's really cool, and there are some great times for it. But I don't think this is one of them, because I think in all cases we're going to use the whole set, and it's not like it's a long operation to do these, so there's not really much value. And we're not multi-threading it regardless. So Till, it actually, a yield return can actually slow you down, and it also makes the code a little bit more confusing to someone that doesn't know yield return, and that's actually the bigger problem. Since the yield return is a more interesting approach, it's a more complex, it's a more unique approach, there are a number of developers that won't be able to identify what it's doing, and so that's why we don't always want to take that approach. It's good when it's good, though. And I could cite, that not everybody here knows how a yield return works, and I can guarantee you there's someone in the chat right now that doesn't know it. And Druid, welcome. Thanks for following. Okay, so this should work. Let's go ahead and try running the code now. Well, cross your fingers. I think it works. This time we actually expect a green. There we go. It did it. Awesome. Nice, Till. That's a lot of coins. Okay, so we can use a custom delimiter. Let's take a look at our instructions again. So, yep, we can use custom delimiter. And all the existing scenarios work as before. We know that because our tests are still passing. That's how we know they still work. So calling add with a negative number will throw in exceptions. Negative not allowed. Oh, see? Now we get to the negatives aren't allowed. So now we actually want to check that. So calling a negative is going to throw an exception, negatives not allowed, and then we list all the negative numbers that were in the list of numbers. So that's actually a significant change. Then adding to a collection, but for devs who haven't seen it, they're absolutely right, it can be confusing. Yeah, Greendoff. That's the idea. So for devs that don't know yield, it's a little confusing, and we get too many varying skill levels, so within one team, what you can get is when someone doesn't know yield return and asks about it, you can explain it to them. But here it's a little rough because someone could watch our video or something like that. and yes, Till, that is terrible that our calculator does not support negative numbers. Even though it already works with negative numbers, so it's silly that we don't allow them. But that's fine. Okay, so if we got a negative number, right here is where we are doing our parsing of our numbers. So we need to now say that if we got a negative, we want to handle it differently. But since it wants them listed, that means that we need to do each one. So I'm going to change the code before we get to that point to make this easier. So what I'm going to do is this. Let's make the test first. So we're going to come down here. I forget how these do this. What is it? Throws? And what did it say the type is? Throws and exceptions. Negatives not allowed. So we're going to make a negatives not allowed exception. Negatives not allowed exception. So we expect it to throw a negatives not allowed exception. And then this needs to be the code that actually tests it. So this is going to be okay, there we go. So we're going to call add with that, and we expect this to throw an exception. And actually, let's just call this input for now, so we can maintain the string. So we're going to pass in a -1, and we're going to say throw exception. So should throw exception given negative numbers. Alright, let's get rid of the beginning there. Assert throws that given this type. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to create this special exception test. Unit uint.tryparse. Greendoff, that is, no, they said to throw an exception, but you're right, we could do that, but our instructions want us to do it differently. And yes, you guys are totally right, you could do that, but we do actually need to handle the case where it was negative, because we need to tell them about it. So you guys aren't wrong. You aren't wrong, but that's not what the instructions called for. All right. So we're gonna do this exception. So I'm starting the test out simply. So we're just checking that it throws. We're not actually. Who needs instructions? I don't need you. I don't need your instructions. All right. So this test fails, and hopefully for the reason we expect, which is that there was no exception thrown. So expected that exception to be thrown, so that's totally fine. So here's what we're gonna do. Clearly I can't make this work as is. So I think there's a callback on this, right? That's our test code. Is there a way to get a callback on this? How do I get the object? I forget how to do that. String parameter test code. And Aeon, welcome. Thanks for following. I've missed so much since I had like 3 calls. I'll have to rewatch the streams over. Yeah, no problem, old salty beard. Yeah, there will be a video of this stream. So if you do have to duck out, you can catch the rest of it on the video. Where are we going? We don't need no. Yeah. No. I don't think so. I don't think so. So we throw that exception, we call that, I want to get this actual exception that was thrown. So alternately, what we could do is this. We could just literally put in the try catch, and that would also work. So we could call this, and then want to catch this exception, and then what would we do in here? Return. And out here, is there a fail? I thought there was a way to do that. Yeah, we could just do it that way. Doesn't assert throws return the exception? Oh, yeah, see, Blub's got it for me. Thanks, Blub. Yes, it does. You're the best, Blub. Appreciate it. Love ya. Blub for the win. See, I couldn't remember that. All right, make that a variable. Test code. So there's our test code. Use a local function. All right, we'll use a local function. Why not? Okay. So assert dot. What do we want? Contains. So we want -1 to be in the string exception. Because we brought in this input of -1. So I'm not going to use the parameters anymore, because this test I don't think I want to do that way. So we're going to make it a fact. It's going to be a single one. We expect that to be in this, and that's going to be exception.message. So in the message, we expect it to contain the value -1. So there we go. Hang on 1 second while I bonus Blub here with 50 coins. Congratulations, Blub. Thank you for remembering that that actually returned back the value. Okay, so expected type of that. So we didn't throw our exception yet. But now we're at the point where we can't really make this test pass just yet without a bit of refactoring. So what I want to do is this. Because we're going to refactor, I'm going to comment the test out. While the test is commented out, I am going to rerun everything, and everything's passing. Now the reason I do this is because it's really easy to verify green. So since we're going to do some refactoring, I want to comment that test out and go back and refactor first. So when I go here, I want to change how this works. So instead of summing here, I want to make a number list. So I am going to say a list of integers that we're going to call the number list equals a new list. And then inside of here, instead of summing, we're going to say numberList.add number. And down here, we're going to say numberList.sum. And I'm going to get rid of that sum variable now. So what we're going to do is we're going to get all of our numbers, and then we're going to call this. So this actually is going to, so this is just a refactoring. The code should work exactly the same way. So when I rerun the tests, they should all still pass. And they do. So everything came back green again. So behind my head is a bunch of green text. So that means our tests are passing. So that's good. So now what we can do is make that test actually work. So our refactoring's done. Bring the test back, and we're going to run it again, and it should fail still. And that's fine. It's allowed to fail. In fact, we want it to. So it fails because we're not throwing the exception. So first things first, we want to make the exception happen, then we'll add in the numbers. So one step at a time, even when making a failing test pass, just get it to pass a little bit more, even if it doesn't pass all the way yet. So I want to say, check for negative numbers. So I'm going to make a check for negative numbers method, passing in our number list. Whoops. So this method, its whole job is just going to be to check for negative numbers. And if we have them, it's going to throw an exception. So right now, this test does nothing. And that's fine. I'm going to rerun all the tests, and I expect the same number to fail. So I've made a change. I'm going to run my test again, just make sure everything's good. And it is. Same number of tests passing as before. Automated message broken again. What do you mean, Blub? Automated messages I don't think are broken, are they? Maybe they are. Oh, actually they might be. They might be. Yeah, we're on a weird branch right now, Blub, so they might actually be. I forgot what branch we're on. We're on the one that we were pairing with Simon on, that I still need to merge in. Yeah, because it was actually using not the latest branch, so he and I were not on the latest branch, so it's this one, which has this lovely thing. But the features it supports, the features. Look, schedule. Where do you guys live? Miami? You guys live in Miami? Schedule for Miami. There you go. Eastern Daylight Time. Yeah, look at that. But that works. Look at that, Till. Look at that beautiful schedule. So if you want to know our schedule, by the way, our usual schedule here on the stream is Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. And if you live in Miami, it's 2 p.m., 2 p.m., 12 p.m., and 1 p.m. So there you go. Look at that. Everyone failed to pay the 50... Yes, we don't know what time our stream is in heaven. Okay, so here's what we want to do. So our number list. So if number list dot contains, and we want to do this as not this. We want to say dot any. If there are any, where x is less than 0. So essentially we want to say if we have any numbers in our list that are less than 0, then we want to do this. So what we're going to do is actually, I'm going to slightly change this. I'm going to say var negative numbers equals number list dot where, and we're going to say x arrow x is less than 0. And I'm going to to-list this. And the reason I'm to-listing it is because I was going to have to any it. And so if I left it as an enumerable and then used it, I would get the complaint schedule, Brendan's house, Pacific Daylight Time. I'm amazed that Brendan's returned something. That is ridiculous. So that's mildly crazy. Yeah, you guys are nuts. Crazy chat. Well, I was unaware that I lived in Pacific time. That's news to me. Alright, so here's what we're going to do. Throw new negative numbers not allowed exception. So if there were any, we're going to throw that. So first things first, we do that. We build and run the tests, and this should fail for a new reason. Okay, so here we go. So now it says it failed because we did not find -1. So that's perfect. So our test got to the point where it now says, hey, it threw the exception just fine, but we didn't actually get the value that we wanted. So that's good. So negative numbers not allowed exception. Now what I want to do is I want to just pass in negative numbers not allowed to this. So let's add that as a constructor parameter to that type. So I can just come down here and I can say create a constructor for it. Now it says list. I'm going to change that because this really just needs to be an IEnumerable because we're going to enumerate it once. So we're going to pass this value in, and we're going to say, actually, how are we going to do this? Base. So the way an exception works in C# is it has this in its constructor. I don't know how well you can see that. M. Giuseppe, welcome. Thanks for following. So it wants a string message as one of these. So that's one of the constructors for an exception. And so in our constructor, we can call that constructor. So what I want to do is I want to say negative, let's add a $sign at the beginning of this. We're going to say negative numbers not allowed. Negative numbers not allowed. What did it say in our instructions? How does it want this message output? Negatives. Oh, negatives not allowed, and then a list of them. Okay. Well, that's easy enough. Negatives not allowed, and then a list of them. Cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say string.join. And can this take an IEnumerable? Yes, it can. So we're going to pass in a comma and negative numbers. And that should work. So we're going to go ahead and run the tests again. It's going to go ahead and build, run everything. And when we get back, we expect all greens, and we do. Hey, there we go. So that works nicely. Awesome. So we have our custom exception that throws. So if you pass in a negative number, that's what you get back. So just to make sure that that actually does work, I'm going to pass in -4, -1, and then 7. And I want to do our contains -1, -4, and it should also, it should not contain the number 7. So not contain, does not contain, there we go. So it should not contain 7. So there we go. So Jester98X, when you call the any extension method, it's actually going to check the same thing, but you're right, it is technically, it would be faster to check this. So what Jester's suggesting here is that we could say count equals 0, or count greater than 0, right? And so the way that a list actually stores the count as an integer inside of itself, and this will actually allow it to tell that there is an element in here. But the way that the extension method any works, when it's applied to a list, is it actually checks that same value. So it's going to do the same thing regardless there. So it's really up to you what you like better in terms of the actual like view of the code. So if reading this makes more sense to you, write it this way. If reading .any makes more sense to you, write it with the .any. And a lot of that just comes down to what is going to help you understand the code, and I should say you and your team understand the code. So that goes for pretty much most things in coding. Try to get it so that most people can read it. So if you like this better, yeah, I'm good with this. So that's actually the nice thing about the way that they implemented the extension methods for all the enumerable values in for all the like link lambda expression-y type extension methods they created for like .any, .count. So if you call the .count method, for example, and you called that on a list, it's actually just going to use the count value. If you passed it an array, it's going to use length. If it really was something that required enumerating the full thing, then it's going to enumerate to get that count value. And so the extension method's smart enough to call the right one. So it was written well. So thank you, C# team, for getting us good stuff. We really appreciate it when they do that, because otherwise we'd actually have to be super careful as devs which one we used. Okay, so that code works as we expected, so that's awesome. We block our negative numbers the way we want to. So numbers greater than 1,000 should be ignored. Okay, so that is a perfectly fine test that we can take care of. So what I am going to do is this. I am going to say ignore, so it should ignore numbers above 1,000. And I'm not going to say given numbers above 1,000 because that's just kind of, that's kind of, it feels obvious to me. So what I'm going to do is I am going to change this one to be a theory because I want to do some inline data for this. So we're going to do some more inline data, so that means we're going to pass in what we expect. So we're going to say 5, and then I'm going to say 5, 1,000. And down here, I need to say int expected and string input. And what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to say calculator add again. So I'm going to rewrite this from these ones. So I'm going to steal this code because it's the same thing. So yes, these tests actually have the exact same code, but the reason we're doing that, it's so simple, but we want our test names to be nice. So that's why we're splitting them this way. So 5 and then 5, 1,000. So this is our test here. Expected input, so our expected value is 5, our input is 5, 1,000. And now I want to do the opposite. So I want to do 1,000 and we'll say 4. So it should ignore it in either case. And just to be clear, I'm going to add another 1,000 here and expect this one to be 3. So we have a few tests that should verify that that works the way we want. Now right now we're going to have some big numbers. These aren't going to match because this is going to do like 2003 doesn't equal 3. Oh yeah, 1,000 is not above 1,000. That was a good call, Warren Buffett. But if you want to loan me like $1,000, I wouldn't mind. Which actually makes me question. We need to clarify: is 1,000 the one? Numbers greater than it should be 1,000. So 1,001. Yeah. Okay. Good call. Good call. Above 1,000. So we're gonna do 1,001, 1,002, 1,003, and 1,004. It's over 9,000! Okay, so now this test should be failing right there. Ignore numbers above that, and all 3 fail because we didn't ignore the thousands. Totally fine. So, what I want to do is this. So we did a check for negative numbers. The next thing I want to do is I want to do a method that has some intentional side effect here. So I'm not always a big fan of this, but I am going to do it here. That is actually a good point. Let's do a let's do the reverse test in a moment. We're gonna do the other one to make sure that 1,000 works, but let's make this test pass first. So we're gonna say remove. We're gonna say remove large numbers. So we will remove large numbers from our number list. And this is what I meant when I said we're going to have side effects here. I am actually going to apply a side effect from this. Now, I wrote it this way because I think it's really clear to a developer what this method does, despite the fact that it does have a side effect to it. So I want to remove all. So remove all is a fancy method that is actually available to us on our list. And if you haven't seen the implementation of remove all, so you could do that Ace Flame Seer and just not count them when you do the sum, but I specifically wanted to show you all the remove all method because I love the way it's written. I have actually seen the code for this, and it is amazing. So this is a very well written method. It's got some neat tricks to it, and I want to actually talk about it on stream someday. So one of my goals is to eventually have some streams where we actually do like dig into some real stuff and talk about like some really advanced concepts. That'll be a while, and I will warn people before we do one of those that we're going to look at like actually how things work in C#. So I think it'll be fun. But yeah, you're right. We could just in our sum just do a where on this, and then add it and just say like, yeah, where it's not this. But that's less fun. But I guess since this is so simple, there's no reason to do that either now, is there? So, because I could just do this if we're just going to do it in one line anyway. Numbered list dot, whoops. Numbered list dot remove all where number is greater than 1,000. So there we go. So where number is greater than 1,000, remove it. And then we'll sum it. Check for negative numbers first, because we don't need to even do the work of removing the negative numbers if we're throwing an exception for the negatives. Okay. Alright, so now they've been removed and the test passes, but you all are right. We should check the edge case here. So I am going to check that edge case. Sum numbers up to 1,000. Should some numbers correctly given numbers up to 1,000. So we're gonna do this 1,000, and that should be 1,005. Why are we doing 1,005? Because Till suggested 1,003. That's why we're doing 1,005. Just kidding, Till. We're doing 1,003 also. There you go, buddy. Congratulations. I was just kidding, everybody. I was just kidding. I'm not that mean. No, I like Till. Till's fun. I like a lot of people in it. We have a really good community here. So I have been thrilled with how nice all of you all are. It's quite good. So there we go. Test pass. Woohoo. Alright, so return that delimiters can be any length using this syntax. Oh god! Oh! We did single delimiter and we said they had to be one character. They're making us change things. These new features. Alright, so we can do that, that's fine. Delimiters can be any length using this syntax. I can't even tell what that syntax is. Let's go ahead and steal the code though. We're gonna go ahead and apply it. Old Chrome is so old. Do I have old Chrome? I don't have latest Chrome. I don't know. Is that what you were saying? All right. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna put this in here, and we're saying that that should return 6. So chop 6. So this code we're told is supposed to return 6. Now what is this? This is 3 pipes? It wants to have a delimiter of 3 pipes? But that's not showing more than 1. Oh, that's of any length. Okay, so if it's inside a square braces, it could be of any length. Okay, got it. So we're going to say it should allow multi-character delimiters given square braces. Okay, that sounds fine. We can do that. We can do that. We can make this work. We can make this work. So right now this test is going to fail. That's totally fine. We're not worried about that. We know it could fail. So there it is. We expected 6. We actually got a value of 0, and that's because it didn't identify any delimiters here. It tried to find one, couldn't find it. The best Chrome is Opera. Wow, Greendolf. You know, I actually did use Opera a little bit back in the day. It wasn't terrible. Not the worst browser I've ever used. That award definitely goes to... Oh, sorry, my audio cut out right there. Alright, so... Netscape. Yes, Katrina. Netscape, definitely the worst. No, Netscape's not the worst. Well, maybe the end of Netscape, right before he died. That was pretty bad. But probably not the worst one. Yeah, so there are a lot of browsers that are the same browser anymore. So get delimiters now can check for a bigger delimiter. So number starts with that. If number starts with that, then we're going to split it out. But we don't want to do that anymore. So this should give us our delimiter declaration piece. So in our delimiter declaration, we're saying we want to grab the first value and single it. But that's not what we want anymore. So we were grabbing our square brace as the one. But that's not what we want. We want to say... this is getting worse. So if delimiter declaration, so we were substringing to remove the beginning. So let's do this. So let's simplify. So this is hang on. So our delimiter declaration, I'm going to cut it a little bit. Give me 1 second. I'm going to take this substring. So we're going to say chop off the beginning. So our delimiter declaration is actually going to be just that value. So let me show you the example. So if we have this, pipe, and then a new line, right? So if this is the whole piece, then we want to chop everything to the right and chop these 2 values, and then we'll be left with just these 3, just this section here. Okay, so I can understand if I use another wrapper. You should do a stream on creating your own DevChatter browser. Till, that is unlikely. Oh my god, the funny thing is, Greendolf, I have had to build Windows applications that had web browser controls in them before, quite a long time ago. But there are some use cases where you need to do that, and it is a little weird. And no, you're not really building a browser, despite the fact that you sort of are. And the scary thing is it uses IE when you do that, basically. So, anyway, okay, so our delimiter declaration. So, we want to say this is just this piece. So, if delimiter declaration dot starts with. If it starts with a square brace, then that means it's a multi-string, and we want to just get its middle portion. So for now, again, there's only one of these. Oh, actually, I'm tempted to click on that link from. No, I should whitelist XKCD. You're right, and I am actually willing to click on an XKCD link. If you're having Perl problems, I feel bad for you, son. Yes, that Sork. That is a great suggestion there. Blub. A lot of Microsoft links are whitelisted, but I can't remember exactly which ones. But yeah, I should whitelist XKCD. So I will do that at some point. So. Let me write myself a note on physical stuff. Whitelist XKCD. So that is a good point. I should whitelist that one. I'm not going to whitelist YouTube there, Ace Flameseer. And actually, I am tempted to whitelist clips at some point on Twitch, but even that one's questionable because you can get weird stuff there that I don't know that I want people to link. Okay, so, whoops. Yeah, so delimiters can be of any length doing that. So that means that we need to change from a character array to a string array. So I am going to change to strings from characters. And this Alright, so I'm going to break things real fast here. Comma. And then this is going to be \n for a new line. Okay, so now we have our delimiters, we have our... So this is our collection that we're going to send back. If we take a look at where this is called, you'll see we can just change that to a string array as well. And then the string split, I believe, can take a string array, can't it? Can it not? Can string split not take a string array? Is that seriously not one of its options here? Really? I'm not sure I believe you. I thought it could. Whoa! I didn't know it could do that. I thought it could take that. I swear they had an overload that took a string instead of a character. Huh. Well now, that is a new one on me. In that case, I guess we're switching back to the character character delimiters for now. And we'll have to split the next one. Yeah, no, I can't get away with it, Greendolf, because the problem is we need those 3 characters to be treated as a character then. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to treat that as a special one. So I'm not sure what we're going to do with that one. So, yeah, see what I mean? So we may have to get rid of our string split finally and write our own. So yeah, we'll do that. We'll go the other way. We'll do our own string split. I mean, it's not great, but I guess we pretty much have to. No, it can, as long as you pass in a string split options. Okay. Well now, I told you I thought it could do that. I was like, wait, I swear it could do this. Okay, there we go. All right, no, we're not doing it. Yes, Greendolf, I was originally planning on actually doing it that way, but no, looks like we don't have to, so we can do this instead. But yes, Greendolf, doing a string split that came out as a read-only span is actually something that I would love to do at some point. So do me a favor, make an issue on the DevChatter stream info asking for that one. if you would please. We're not going to do it today, but I do want to do that because it is a super valuable thing, and not only is it useful to other developers to be able to do a string split that works that way, but it also will allow us to show how to do a read-only span of characters from a string and do that. So it's a neat trick, everybody, and I want to do it on a future stream. So if you're able to request that as an issue on our stream info, that would be awesome. If not, I will try to remember to get that as well. Okay, so we were trying to make this delimiter work. So we're saying if it starts with this, then we're going to treat this as a string that we want to remove the start and the end square braces. So delimiter declaration dot remove start index count. Turns back a string. That's not what I want to do. I could substring it, where I do a 1, and then I do, what would it be? String.length? Oops, delimiter declaration.length. Length, so -2. So we do that. Then store this value as the delimiter, and then add that. Otherwise, if it didn't start with this, then we use this approach. So I'm going to say delimiters.add, and then either delimiter declaration, because it either is this value, since we already split it down to the lowest piece, or and put it up here, or we want this one. So one of these two gets added in there. So I'm going to call this so custom delim. So our custom delim substring, blah, 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 blah. Whoops, did not mean to do that. Alright, and yes, it's telling me I can ternary operator this. Anyone else tired of the... Till, I'm not sure what you're talking about. Prime ads. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and run this again. We'll see what happens. Hey! And welcome, Mike. Thank you for the subscription. Much appreciated. And can we get some DevChatter hype emotes in chat? Please enjoy your hype emote. And celebrate along with us as we succeed in writing some awesome code together. So, when you start watching a stream, you get a long ad, and it's been the same 2 ads for me at least for ages. Oh, okay, Green Dove, that's funny. But yeah, also, pro tip, Till. If you are subscribed to a channel, you don't actually see ads on those channels. So yeah, that's nice. So that's also why, even without it, Greendorf wouldn't actually see ads because he is a subscriber to the channel. Well, there you go, Ace Flameseer. Okay, so it's suggesting that I could do this, which is ternary operator. It's a pretty simple one. It's not super complicated, but I think most devs are going to look at this and they're going to understand what's going on a little bit easier. So as much as I like that other one, we're going to stick with this for now. Running the tests again. If you have ad blocker, you don't see them either. Oh, okay, so see, there you go. Nuffly doesn't actually have to see the ads. Why overwhelm my browser with an ad blocker? Okay, so that test seems to work, and Let's see, delimiters can be any length using this syntax. Allow multiple delimiters using this syntax. Okay, so now we'd have to use that. And then I'm going to look at what the last one was. Handle multiple delimiters of any length. Which I can't imagine you wouldn't do when doing this. So 8 and 9 feel like they probably just go together. So I'm not sure why it separated them there, but that's fine. Okay, so what I want to do is this. I am going to jump over here, open this up as a folder in File Explorer, and then I am going to take this and attempt to drag it into here. Local path, yep, that's great. Create a repository here. Name that, and let's give it a gitignore file for Visual Studio. So I dragged the folder in here, and this is what it does. I'm not going to put a license in here. We're going to add a basic README to it, and that is a decent name. And so now when I do this, it creates a repository in that location. And actually, did it commit all the files? If it did, that's hilarious. We'll find out, I guess. I'm going to go ahead and try to publish it. So we're going to send this up to GitHub. I do not want to keep it private. This is absolutely public code. We're going to push it to DevChatter. And that's the name, and publish the repository. And there we go. Do we handle the delimiter being end delimiter definition character? Greendorf, we do actually. You could use that. Since all I did was I just removed the first and the last character. So we actually do allow that right now. We didn't do it perfectly, so we didn't handle all the weird cases that we might get, because in this programming kata, you're specifically not supposed to try to handle all the weird, like what-ifs cases. We do want to handle any delimiter, but we don't handle the things like, what if they gave you broken syntax or something like that. We don't handle all of those. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look on GitHub and see if that repository got pushed up or not. So there it is. Let's see if there's any code in it. String calculator. And there it is. Cool. So we have our initial commit that it did, and it includes all the code. So awesome. So that is recorded, and wasn't that crazy easy using GitHub Desktop to push this up here? I thought it was. It works so nicely. And did anyone get that issue suggested? No one got the issue suggested. Okay, so I'm going to go put in the issue that Greendorf was asking for. So we're going to say build, what is these? Example, read-only span code. Perhaps a string.split. Custom string.split. Greendorf really wants us to do our own that. Cool. Do I have a label stream suggestion? Nope. I really need to, because those should be labeled as a stream suggestion at some point. Yeah, good try, Greendorf. Good try. There we go. All right. So we have that on there. Other things that I want to talk about. So first off, schedule -4. What exercise are you doing? Is it like a site of tutorials? You're just making it up on the go. Anakim Luke, we are actually doing a kata that is from our Dallas's kata catalog. So our Dallas and I are colleagues. We worked together for a bunch of years, and we made a bunch of katas. So like half of these, the text of these were actually written by me, but they are loaded here in awesome, collection form. Steve made markdown files as well as PDFs, so if you want to print them out, you can. And you can actually find all the katas that we were doing here. And we do these occasionally on streams, so if you do want to catch us doing more of these katas, so our current goal is to try and do one kata a week. So one stream is going to be a kata stream a week, and roughly speaking, about one stream a week is going to be for beginners. And then our other 2 streams during the week are usually going to be working on our project stuff. So that's sort of what we're targeting right now. So we do 4 streams a week, of which 2 of them are working on our project code. 1 of them is working on beginner stuff. So we're hoping that still has value for all the experienced devs. And if you want, and you are an experienced dev, show up to our beginner days, which you can actually find on this event that I'm going to post here in chat. And thanks for following, Warren. Greatly appreciate it. And so if you show up to one of these events, feel free to help out the people in chat that are asking questions and things like that as they follow along with the code. And we're basically just writing simple programs, so like beginner level stuff in C# that we're going to write together, but we actually want to write some code that accomplishes things still. Because that's what makes it fun, especially for a beginner, is actually seeing your code do something. So that's really what we're going for. So these are the kata catalog. I linked to that. If you want to chat with any of us outside of the stream, I do recommend that people join our Discord. I just linked that in chat as well. And if you want to find our videos of our past streams, you can actually find them here on Twitch in the videos section, or you can check out our YouTube channel, which I linked there, youtube.com/c/devchatter, and that actually will let you get our archive of all of our old videos. So Sork, yes, we do end up in PowerShell sometimes here on the stream, and actually if you check out the stream info link that I was showing in the chat before, you will notice that in our section down here, I do want to do, and thank you for following, everybody, but I do want to do a PowerShell stream. So specifically, I want to do a stream where we actually just focus on the cool stuff you can do in PowerShell that people don't realize. And thank you for that follow as well. So that is actually the goal. We want to do one of these. And I'm going to bring on somebody. We're definitely going to do this one as a pairing stream. So I'm going to bring on somebody that knows PowerShell really well and can talk to us about all the really neat stuff. So that should be a fun one. And yes, so not necessarily shell scripting, but some of the things like aliasing for different stuff, and also what kinds of tools and things are available. So there's a lot of neat things that you can do inside of PowerShell that I think a lot of devs don't realize. So remember, PowerShell basically made it so that like we had a real shell in Windows finally. So for anyone that is on Windows, this should be a cool stream. And then other than that, let's see. I wanted to make sure I got some thanks out there. So I wanted to thank everybody that followed today. I want to thank C# Fritz for the host, Crimson Greens for the bits, Old Salty Beard for the Twitch Prime sub, Mike for the Twitch Prime sub, and then, let's see, a bunch of other people for following. I want to thank all of you for talking in the chat, or if you're just out there lurking and viewing, that's great too. We really appreciate it. Hopefully you all had a good time. I want to thank our mods for helping out today, so thanks Greendorf, and I think I saw Katrina in here as well. So thank you for your assistance today, and I look forward to seeing you guys the next time. I do want to actually say one thing before you all take off regarding our schedule. So there will not be any stream on Saturday or all of next week. So I'm actually going to be, taking a week off, and I will be back on July 16th. So I just want to let you guys all know. So 11 days from now, expect a really awesome, fun stream. We're going to start with our beginner one, and then we're going to jump into some awesome things. I'm going to try to get some guests lined up for that week because I do want to have our return be a really fun one. So hopefully you can all survive until I am back. But until then, enjoy a good week. And yeah, I know, Greendorf, you guys are all going to have to go an entire week without DevChatter. So I apologize about that. But I think you'll all survive. I hope I do. So as long as I don't die, I will be back. And Rubik's, your timing's impeccable. I'm just wrapping up the stream. But I was just letting everybody know that we're actually going to take 1 week off, and I will be back on July 16th. So should be a good one when we get back. And no, sorry, no, Pepsi, it's right here. This is the Pepsi. Ace of Times here, we got Pepsi right here. Yeah, thank you. And if you want to know when our usual schedule is, I recommend you put it on your calendar so you make sure you don't miss the streams. But if you don't know, so our schedule, if you call our schedule command, it returns it back to you in UTC time. However, you can mention your city if you want to get it where you are. So, for example, I could say something like New York. And it will spit me back Eastern Daylight Time and tell me what time it is in New York. But I don't just have to pick New York, I could pick almost anything. I could pick a much smaller city. I could say something like schedule, and I could say Atlanta. And so then it gives me Eastern Daylight Time also. So, yeah, Rubik. So we put this on here. Couldn't find Earth. Yeah, Earth is difficult to find. So, yeah, some of the joke ones it doesn't actually find, which would be nice, but it doesn't. So anyway, I wanted to thank everybody for coming out and hanging out today, and we will definitely have a good stream in about 11 days. So hang in there, everybody, and we will see you then. Later, everybody.